Hi, welcome in. This is an original Tales First story, and I'll let it speak for itself. Let's begin.
My parents sold my 11-year-old daughter's antique cello, the one she got from my grandmother, for $87,000 and spent the money on a pool for my sister's kids. When Grandma found out, she didn't cry. She smiled and said, "The cello was." My parents' faces went pale. I knew something was wrong before we even got to the music room. You can smell a renovation the way you can smell a lie. Fresh paint, sawdust, that sharp chemical tang that says someone has spent money they didn't tell you about. Lucy climbed out of the car with her backpack and her music binder and rosin tin, light, because the important part was already inside. Because the actual cello lived at my parents' house in my grandma's old music room. Lived being the key word I didn't understand yet. Lucy had been looking forward to this all day, not in a yay chores way, in a this is mine way. She'd been humming under her breath in the car, tapping rhythms on her knees, already halfway in that focused little world she disappears into when she plays. "Do you think Great-Grandma will be there today?" Lucy asked, pulling her ponytail tighter like she could control the universe with elastic. "She's at her place," I said. "Not today. We'll call her later." Lucy nodded, but her eyes stayed hopeful anyway. Like maybe my grandma had changed her mind overnight and came back to the house because she missed the smell of my dad's aftershave and my mom's passive-aggressive sighs. We walked up to the front door. I had a key, not because I'm especially trusted, but because I'm useful. There's a difference. One gets you love. The other gets you access codes and errands. The second I opened the door, I heard it. A muffled whine of power tools somewhere in the background. And the smell, definitely paint. Definitely money. Lucy's face lit up. "Are they fixing the music room?" I didn't answer right away because my brain was still doing that slow, dumb buffering thing it does when reality doesn't match the script. We stepped inside. A tarp covered the hallway runner like the house was preparing for surgery. Cardboard boxes lined the wall. Someone had taped off the entryway with blue painter's tape, which is a polite way of saying, "Don't touch anything, peasant." Lucy tiptoed like she was in a museum. "Mom!" I called, loud enough to reach whatever part of the house my mother currently ruled from. No answer. Lucy headed toward the back window. "Whoa!" I followed her gaze and felt my stomach drop. The backyard looked excavated, like the earth had been peeled open and rearranged. A big rectangle had been carved out where the grass used to be. Piles of dirt sat like small mountains. There were forms along the edges, rebar, stacks of pavers. It wasn't finished, but it was absolutely not subtle. A pool, a full-on in-ground pool. Because why quietly improve your life when you can broadcast it to the neighborhood with heavy machinery? Lucy blinked. "Is that for us?" There was so much hope in her voice that I actually hated everyone I was related to in that moment. "I don't know," I said carefully. "Let's get your cello." We walked down the hall toward the music room, which had always been my grandma's territory even when she lived with them. She'd turned it into a little sanctuary, temperature controlled, humidifier humming quietly, shelves with old sheet music, a lock on the cabinet because she wasn't born yesterday. Lucy loved it in there. She said it smelled like polish and peppermint tea. I said it smelled like someone who still believed in boundaries. I pushed open the door. The humidifier was still running. The stand was still there. The corner where the cello case always rested, where Lucy's cello rested like it belonged to her, was empty. Not moved. Not put away. Empty. Lucy didn't scream. She didn't even inhale. She just froze. Then she walked to the corner, slowly, like she was approaching an animal that might bite. She looked down at the spot, looked up at the shelf, looked behind the chair like maybe it had fallen and no one had noticed for several days. Then she turned to me. "Did Great-Grandma change her mind?" she asked, voice small and careful, like she was trying not to disturb the air. My throat tightened. "No," Lucy swallowed. "Then where is it?" She didn't sound angry. That would have been easier. She sounded careful, like the question itself might get her in trouble. Her fingers drifted to the edge of the stand like she expected to feel the cello there. Wood, weight, something real. And when there was nothing, she pulled her hand back fast, like she'd touched a hot stove. Her eyes got glossy, but she didn't let anything fall. She just nodded once, too hard, like she was forcing the moment to behave. I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Not for sure. But I could already feel where this was heading, and I hated that my kid was standing in the middle of it. I left Lucy in the music room because I needed her not to see my face when I found out. I marched toward the kitchen. My mom was there, of course. She was always in the kitchen when she wanted to look like she was holding the family together with her bare hands. She had a mug in one hand and her phone in the other. Her hair was pulled back like she'd been busy, which in my family usually means busy ignoring something. My dad sat at the table scrolling through something on his tablet, calm as a man who believes the world will always make room for him. My sister Rachel was perched on a stool, sipping something green and expensive looking. She didn't look up when I walked in. She barely ever did. "Where's Lucy's cello?" I asked. My mom blinked slowly like she was confused why I'd bring up something inconvenient during her morning coffee. "Good morning to you too, Emily," she said. I stared at her. My dad sighed. "What's the problem now?" I could feel my heart doing that annoying thing where it tries to climb out of my chest and find a quieter family. "Lucy's cello," I repeated. "Where is it?" Rachel snorted without looking up. "Oh, please!" My mom took a sip of her coffee. "Your father handled it." Handled it. That phrase is like a red flag printed in cursive. "Handled it how?" I said. My dad finally looked up. "We sold it." The room went strangely quiet, like the house itself wanted to hear what happened next. I blinked. "You sold it?" "Yes," my dad said, like he was explaining taxes. "It was valuable. It was sitting there. Your grandmother wasn't even using it." "It wasn't hers," I said. "It was Lucy's." Rachel laughed. "She's 11. My mom set her mug down with a soft clink. "Emily, don't start." "Don't start," I repeated. "You sold my daughter's cello." My dad leaned back. "It was a family asset." "No," I said, voice sharper now. "It was set aside for Lucy. My grandma was clear about that." Rachel finally looked up, eyes bright with annoyance. "And my kids are what? Chopped liver?" Ben and Olivia weren't even in the room, and somehow they were still the main characters. My mom waved a hand toward the backyard. "We're doing something nice for the children." I stared at her. "The children," she said again, like she expected a round of applause. "Ben and Olivia deserve space. They deserve—" "And Lucy doesn't," I said. My dad rubbed his forehead, already tired of me being a person. "Lucy will be fine with a student cello. You can rent one. Plenty of kids do." Lucy will be fine. That's my family's favorite prayer. It means, we did what we wanted, and we're not dealing with your feelings. I could feel my hands shaking. I forced them still on the counter. "Where is it?" I asked, quieter now. "Who did you sell it to?" My dad shrugged. "A guy. Collector. Paid by wire. Quick sale." Of course. My mom's eyes sharpened. "And before you get any ideas, you are not telling your grandmother." I stared at her. "She doesn't need stress," my mom said, voice clipped. "She's settling in at her facility. Professionals are taking care of her. Let her have peace." "You mean, let you have peace," I said. My dad's expression hardened. "Don't make this about you." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "It's about my kid." Rachel leaned forward, voice sweet in that fake way that makes you want to check your wallet. "Emily, honestly, you're always acting like Lucy is some tragic orphan. She's fine. She has you." The way she said "you" made it sound like a punishment. I turned back toward the hall. Lucy was still in the music room, standing in the empty corner like she was waiting for someone to tell her she mattered. I walked back to her, knelt, and took her hands. "We're going home," I said. Lucy nodded without arguing. That was the worst part. She didn't even fight. She just folded, like she'd been trained for this. As we left, my mom called after me. "Emily, do not call your grandmother. Do you hear me?" I didn't answer. Because I did hear her. I just didn't care anymore. And that's when I knew I was going to tell my grandma everything. That night, Lucy practiced on the battered student cello her teacher kept for emergencies. It sounded like a cardboard box with strings. Lucy didn't complain. She adjusted her posture like she always did, focused, tried again. And every time the sound came out thin and wrong, she blinked hard like she was trying to hold something inside. I stood in the doorway, pretending I was just casually watching. Like this was normal. Like my kid hadn't just been robbed. Lucy finally stopped and set the bow down. "I can still practice," she said, careful. "It's just harder." "I know," I said. She nodded and stared at her hands. "Maybe great-grandma, maybe she didn't mean for it to be mine yet." I felt something inside me go very still. Lucy had spent weeks at that music room with my grandmother, her great-grandmother, learning in a way I couldn't give her. Not because I didn't love her, because love doesn't automatically come with talent. My grandma had it. Lucy had it too. It skipped me like the universe looked at my family and said, "Let's not put all the gifts in the same basket." My grandma used to sit beside Lucy and correct her grip with 2 fingers and a look. She'd say things like, "Your left hand is talking too loudly," which made Lucy giggle, then fix it anyway. She'd praise her the way kids need praising, specific and honest. Better. That was better. Not the empty kind. Not the kind that says "good job" while still checking your phone. Lucy felt seen with her, in a house where she usually had to shrink. Because that was the pattern. In my parents' house, Ben and Olivia could shout, spill juice, run through hallways like tiny kings and queens, and it was adorable. It was kids being kids. It was, "They're so spirited." Rachel, her husband, and the kids were living there too, one of those temporary arrangements that had lasted long enough to grow roots. Lucy was expected to be quiet, polite, grateful. If Lucy laughed too loudly, my mom would say, "Inside voice, sweetheart," with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. If Ben yelled, my dad would laugh and say, "He's got lungs on him." If Olivia demanded attention, Rachel would scoop her up like she was a celebrity. If Lucy needed anything at all, it was treated like an inconvenience. Lucy learned to take up less space the way other kids learn math. My grandma noticed. She didn't always intervene. She was still my mom's mom, and family politics are its own kind of landmine. But my grandma did something quieter. She carved out a space where Lucy didn't have to apologize for existing. That space was the music room. It made practical sense, too. My apartment wasn't exactly designed for antique instruments and long practice sessions. It was safe, clean, and mine, but small. Sound traveled. Neighbors complained. And a cello like Grandma's, and now Lucy's, wasn't something you left in a corner near the radiator and hoped for the best. So we stored it there. In the controlled room. In the cabinet. With the little humidifier humming like a promise. And my grandma had been careful. Not just emotionally careful, paperwork careful. She'd had the cello appraised, photographed, documented. She'd shown me the file once, Not because she wanted to brag, but because she wanted me to understand. "This is not just sentimental," she'd said, tapping the page. "It's valuable. People get strange around valuable things." I'd nodded, because yes, people got strange around valuable things. I just didn't think people meant my parents. My grandma had moved out less than a week ago into a place my mom described as perfect and so much safer and so much less stress, which might have been true for my grandma. It was definitely true for my mom, because the move had been preceded by months of comments like, "This is getting hard," and "She needs professional care," and "It's not fair to all of us." All of us meaning my mom, my dad, Rachel, and somehow, never me, the one who actually showed up. My grandma didn't leave kicking and screaming. She left the way she did everything, with a straight spine and a quiet decision. But once she was gone, the energy in the house shifted. The last set of eyes that mattered had left the room, and my family did what they always did when no one could stop them. They took. Lucy went to bed early that night. She didn't ask to call my grandmother. She didn't ask to complain. She hugged me tightly before she fell asleep, like she was holding herself together with my ribs. After she was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my phone. I kept thinking about the way my mom said, "Don't tell your grandmother." Not, "Don't upset her." Not really. Don't tell her. Like the truth was a weapon and they expected me to keep it holstered for their comfort. I realized something then, and it wasn't pretty. I'd spent most of my life trying not to be difficult. I thought being easy was the same as being loved. It isn't. It's just easier for everyone else, and I wasn't going to teach Lucy that lesson. So the next morning, I drove to my grandma's place. My grandma lived in a bright, tidy apartment in an assisted independent living community that smelled like lemon cleaner and expensive hand soap. It wasn't depressing. It was controlled. There's a difference. A staff member at the front desk smiled and asked who I was visiting, as if my family hadn't just detonated itself. "Margaret," I said. "Ah," she said warmly. "She's in the lounge. She's been expecting you." Of course she had. My grandma was in an armchair with a book in her lap and her glasses perched on the end of her nose like she was about to judge the author personally. She looked up the second I walked in. "Sit," she said. "Your face is doing that thing." I sat down across from her. They did. My grandma didn't flinch. She just waited. So I told her. I kept it simple. The missing cello. The pool excavation, the words my parents used, family asset, Lucy will be fine, don't tell Grandma. My grandma listened without interrupting, the way people do when they're collecting evidence. When I finished, she closed her book slowly. "And Lucy?" she asked. "She went quiet," I said. "She asked if you changed your mind." My grandma's expression didn't crumple. It hardened. Not into rage, into clarity. "She thought it was her fault," my grandma said softly. I nodded. My grandma exhaled through her nose. One sharp breath. Then she asked, "When did you last see the file?" "What file?" "The cello documentation," she said. "Appraisal. Photographs. Identifiers." "I saw it months ago," I said. "You showed me." My grandma nodded. "Good." She leaned forward slightly. "Emily, do you have any texts about the pool? Any pictures? Anything that shows the renovations started right after I moved?" "I can screenshot Rachel's posts," I said, because of course Rachel had posted. Rachel could post her own funeral if the lighting was good. My grandma nodded. "Do that." I stared at her. "Grandma, are you okay?" My grandma looked at me over her glasses. "I am not the one who should be worried," she said. Then she reached for her phone. "I'm going to make a call." I didn't ask who she was calling. My grandma had always had a way of keeping her cards close. My family treated that as sweet and old-fashioned. It wasn't. It was strategic. She made the call, spoke quietly, then hung up. "I will handle it," she said. I blinked. "How?" My grandma gave me a small smile. "Not with yelling," which, in our family, was basically a miracle. She reached across and squeezed my hand. Her fingers were warm, firm. "Lucy is going to get her cello back," she said. My throat tightened. "How do you know?" My grandma's eyes sharpened. "Because it was never theirs to sell." I froze. My grandma watched my face like she was choosing how much to reveal. "Not today," she said gently, like she could read my thoughts. "I will explain when it matters." She stood up. "Go home. Be with your child. Let her practice. Let her feel normal where she can." "What about my mom and dad?" I asked. My grandma's smile didn't reach her eyes this time. "Let them enjoy their pool." I drove home feeling like I'd walked into a room where the air pressure changed. And then, nothing happened. Not publicly, not immediately. Weeks passed. 6, give or take. Lucy practiced on the student cello, and on a rental we scraped together after her teacher found one at a discount. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't hers. The sound didn't bloom the same way. Lucy adjusted anyway, because Lucy was the kind of kid who adapted even when she shouldn't have to. The worst part was that she didn't complain. She just got quieter. Meanwhile, my parents posted pictures of construction progress like they'd personally invented concrete. Rachel posted Olivia holding a tiny inflatable flamingo, Ben wearing goggles, captions like "making memories" and "worth every penny." No apology. No mention of the cello. Just smiling faces and a giant hole in the ground. That night, the invite didn't come to me at all. It landed in the family group chat like a flyer taped to a pole. BBQ. Saturday, 2 p.m., pool reveal. Bring a side if you're coming. No, hope you can make it. No, miss you. Just logistics. Because in my family, feelings are optional, but potato salad is mandatory. I stared at the screen. Lucy glanced over my shoulder again. Her face stayed blank. "Are we going?" I opened my mouth and didn't have an answer yet. The next morning, my grandma called me. "We're going," she said. I swallowed. "Grandma, what are you doing?" My grandma's voice was calm. "I'm doing what I should have done earlier." I started to ask more, but she cut me off. "Emily," she said, "I don't want Lucy watching you swallow this." My chest tightened. "Okay." There was a pause. Then my grandma said, "It's in motion." "In motion?" I repeated. "The cello," she said. My heart kicked. "What do you mean?" She just smiled and said, "You will find out soon enough." Saturday was hot in that oppressive way that makes you feel like you're breathing through a wet towel. Perfect pool weather. Perfect, look how great we're doing weather. Lucy wore her swimsuit under her clothes because she's 11 and Hope is stubborn. She didn't talk much on the drive over. Neither did I. When we pulled up to the house, cars lined the street. People I recognized from holidays. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors. The kind of crowd my family loved because it made them feel important. The backyard looked like a brochure. Blue water shimmered under the sun. The stone deck was spotless. The pergola had string lights like they'd watched one home improvement show and decided they were experts. Ben was already in the pool, splashing like a tiny shark. Olivia sat on a float with sunglasses on, because of course she did. Rachel was holding a drink and laughing loudly at something someone said, like she was hosting a talk show. My mom stood near the grill with that "I am the matriarch" posture she practiced in mirrors. My dad hovered nearby, smiling like a man whose life choices had just been validated by chlorine. And then Lucy and I walked in. My mom's smile flickered. Just a little. Not because she was surprised we came, because she was irritated we had the audacity. "Emily," she said, bright and fake, "you made it." "Hi, Mom," I said. Rachel looked Lucy up and down. "Hey." Lucy nodded politely, quietly, like she'd been trained. Ben cannonballed. Everyone laughed. Olivia squealed. Rachel beamed. Lucy stood beside me with her towel folded carefully in her hands like she didn't know where to put herself. I watched her eyes drift over the pool, over the pergola, over the new loungers, over what her cello had turned into. Lucy swallowed hard. I put my hand on her shoulder. She leaned into it without looking at me. That's when I knew I wasn't here for revenge. I was here because my kid deserved to see what happens when you don't let people take from you and then demand gratitude. My dad clapped his hands. "All right, everyone, food's almost ready." My mom laughed. "And before we eat, we just want to say, this has been a long time coming. We're so happy to finally have a backyard the kids can really enjoy." Applause. Rachel raised her glass. "To family," she said. Applause again. Lucy's fingers tightened around her towel. Then someone said, "Where's Margaret? Isn't she coming?" My mom's smile tightened. "She's busy," she said quickly. Right on cue, the gate clicked. I turned. My grandma walked in. She wasn't in a wheelchair. She didn't look frail. She wore a crisp blouse and slacks, and a calm expression that made the air feel colder even in the heat. Beside her was Andrew, her lawyer and a longtime friend, carrying a slim folder. The backyard went quiet in that way crowds do when they sense a shift, but don't know what kind yet. My mom's face went pale. My dad's smile froze. Rachel's mouth opened slightly, then closed. My grandma stepped forward, eyes sweeping over the pool like she was assessing a poorly done paint job. "Well," she said pleasantly, "you've been busy." My mom forced a laugh. "Mom, this is a party." "I know," my grandma said. "That's why I came." She looked at me, then at Lucy. Lucy straightened a little, like her spine recognized safety. My grandma's gaze softened for a split second. Then she looked back at my parents. "I heard you sold the cello," my grandma said. My mom's lips pressed together. "We didn't want to upset you." My grandma held up a hand. "You didn't want consequences." The word hit like a stone dropped into water. My dad cleared his throat. "Let's talk about this privately." My grandma smiled, and it was not a warm smile. "Oh, Thomas," she said, "you've had plenty of private time." A nervous chuckle rippled through the crowd. Someone shifted their drink from one hand to the other. Someone else pretended to look at the grill. My grandma turned slightly, addressing the backyard the way you might address a room full of people at a small-town meeting. "I won't keep you long," she said. "I know you're here to swim." Rachel snapped. "This is insane!" My grandma ignored her. She looked straight at my parents and said calmly, "The cello was." Everyone leaned in, even if they tried not to. "Held in trust for Lucy." The silence that followed was so sharp it felt like glass. My mom blinked. "What?" my grandma continued, voice even. "I am the trustee. Lucy is the beneficiary. That cello was not a family asset. It was not yours to sell." My dad stared at her like she'd suddenly started speaking another language. Rachel's face flushed. "You can't." My grandma's eyes flicked to Rachel. "I can." Andrew stepped forward quietly and opened the folder. My grandma didn't look at him. She didn't need to. She kept her gaze on my parents because she wanted them to feel it. "I documented that instrument," she said. "Appraisal, photographs, serial identifiers, insurance, the works. Because I've been alive a long time, and I've met people." She paused. Apparently, I'm related to some of them. A few people snorted. Dry humor does that. It slips under the skin while everyone is still deciding if they're allowed to laugh. My mom's voice shook. We didn't know anything about a trust. My grandma nodded. Correct. You didn't. My dad finally found his voice. Where is it? My grandma's smile returned. Safe. Lucy's head snapped up. My grandma looked at her. It was recovered this morning, after Andrew made a few calls and filed the report. Lucy's breath caught. Not a sob. Not a scream. Just a small sound like relief trying to escape. My grandma turned back to my parents. You sold something you did not own. You took the money, and you put it into... She gestured lazily at the pool. This. Rachel snapped. It's for the kids! My grandma's gaze sharpened. Lucy is a kid. Rachel's mouth opened, closed. She looked at Ben and Olivia splashing happily, like she wanted them to be a shield. They weren't. Andrew cleared his throat gently. Margaret, he said quietly. My grandma nodded slightly. Andrew stepped toward my parents and Rachel. I have documents for you. My mom stepped back. No! Andrew didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He held out the papers like a waiter offering a check no one wants to see. Notice to vacate, he said calmly. 60 days. My mom stared at the papers like they were poisonous. My dad's face went from pale to gray. Rachel's voice went shrill. You're kicking us out? My grandma tilted her head. You're acting surprised. That's the part I don't understand. My mom's hands shook. Mom, you can't do this. This is my home. My grandma's expression stayed calm. It is the house you live in. The difference in those sentences was a cliff. I felt Lucy press closer to my side. Rachel's eyes flashed. This is because Emily... No, my grandma said, cutting her off. This is because you sold a child's instrument and poured the money into a pool like it was Monopoly. My dad's voice cracked. We improved the property. My grandma's eyes narrowed slightly. You improved your comfort. With stolen money. In a house you don't even own. My mom looked like she might faint. The backyard was full of people who suddenly remembered they had places to be. Drinks lowered. Conversations died mid-sentence. Someone's laugh came out too late, then stopped. Lucy whispered, Mom. I looked down. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She was holding it in the way kids do when they don't want to make adults uncomfortable. I squeezed her shoulder. Then I looked at my parents, at Rachel, at the pool, at the way they'd built something shiny for Ben and Olivia, and expected Lucy to clap for it. And I said, not loudly, but clearly enough that anyone listening could hear, Lucy isn't second-tier family. My mom's face twisted. Emily? No, I said. I'm not doing this today. Rachel scoffed. So what? Lucy gets everything? I laughed, sharp and dry. She was getting a cello. My grandma took a step toward Lucy. Her voice softened. Sweetheart, you didn't lose it. It was taken. Lucy's lip trembled. I thought I did something wrong. My grandma's eyes flashed with anger so quick it was almost invisible. You did nothing wrong! Andrew held the papers steady. My dad didn't take them. My mom didn't take them. Rachel finally snatched hers like she could rip the reality in half if she tore hard enough. My grandma looked at my parents. 60 days, she said again. You will leave. My dad's voice came out thin. You can't be serious. My grandma's smile was small and cold. Try me. And that was it. Not yelling, not a meltdown, just a line drawn in permanent ink. As the backyard started to break apart, people quietly gathering their things, children being called out of the pool, relatives avoiding eye contact, my mom stood frozen. Rachel's face was red. She hissed something at my dad. My dad didn't respond. Ben and Olivia kept splashing for a few more minutes because kids don't understand adult consequences until the adults force them to. Lucy watched them, then looked at my grandma. "Do I get it back?" she whispered. My grandma nodded. "Yes." Lucy let out a breath I didn't realize she'd been holding for 6 weeks. And I realized something too. My parents' faces had gone pale because my grandma had finally done the one thing my family couldn't survive. She stopped letting them pretend. Lucy got her cello back. It arrived the next day in a hard case that looked like it had traveled through several hands and regretted all of them. My grandma opened it with Lucy like it was a ceremony. Lucy ran her fingers over the wood like she was touching something alive. She didn't say much. She just hugged my grandma so tightly I saw my grandma close her eyes for a second, like she was letting herself feel it now that the danger had passed. My parents, meanwhile, discovered a fun fact about selling something you don't own. People want their money back. The buyer came after them the way you'd expect. Angry, embarrassed, and not interested in my mom's "we didn't know" routine. The words repayment plan entered my parents' vocabulary like a disease. They couldn't pay it all at once. Most people can't, especially not people who pour stolen money into concrete and chlorine. 60 days went faster than they expected. My mom tried bargaining. My dad tried guilt. Rachel tried rage. My grandma didn't move. They packed up their life in a house they'd treated like it was theirs and moved into something smaller, something cheaper, something that didn't have a pool. Rachel and her husband didn't end up saving my parents. Not because they couldn't, because they wouldn't. Rachel suddenly remembered how to distance herself when consequences showed up. One minute it was, "we all agreed," and the next it was, "I told you this was a bad idea." Families like mine have a special talent for rewriting history on the fly. Ben and Olivia adjusted. Kids always do. Lucy adjusted too, but in a different way. She started speaking up more. Small things at first. "Actually, I was sitting there. I don't like that joke. No, I'm not okay with that." The first time she did it in front of my mom's mouth tightened like she'd tasted something bitter. Good. My grandma updated her plans after everything happened. Quietly. Thoroughly. The way she does. She didn't give speeches about it. She just slid a folder across my kitchen table one evening and said, "Andrew's handling the paperwork. I'm putting the house into a trust. I'll be the trustee. You'll be the beneficiary. So it's protected now, and it's yours in the end." The day they moved out, Lucy and I packed up our apartment. No ceremony, just boxes, keys, and a house that finally felt like it could breathe. The first night we slept there, the house sounded different. No construction, no performative laughter, no heavy footsteps pacing like ownership. Just quiet, the kind that feels earned. Then my grandmother moved back in, this time for real. Not as someone being taken care of, not as an inconvenience managed in a spare room, as the person who belonged there. Lucy helped her unpack like it was a celebration. She carried sweaters and books and that little tin of peppermint tea like each one was a vote for the future. And then, like it was the most natural thing in the world, my grandma sat in the living room while Lucy practiced. No shrine of silence, no tight smiles, no inside voice, sweetheart. Just music, filling a house that finally knew who it was for. When spring came, Lucy auditioned for the regional youth orchestra and got in. But this time, she had her instrument. And something else. Proof. Proof that when someone tried to take her future and build a pool with it, the adults who mattered didn't tell her to swallow it. They showed up. They told the truth. And they made sure she never had to apologize for wanting a place at the table. So what do you think? Did my grandma go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.